There's a long tradition of Nords leaving Skyrim to find a life somewhere else, and for many, that means Cyrodiil. Some come for trade, others for military service, a few just want a break from the cold or the constant talk of war and honor. They show up with strong backs, proud names, and stories of home, thinking they'll be seen for their courage and skill. But the moment they set foot in the Imperial City, or one of the southern counties, they start to notice the looks. A Nord in Cyrodiil is always just a little out of place. The food is different, the speech is smoother, and the people carry themselves with a certain polish that feels strange to someone raised around mead halls and stone longhouses. And it doesn't take long for that difference to turn into something colder. Guards question them more often. Merchants raise their prices. Locals assume they're bodyguards or brawlers. It's not open hatred most of the time, just a steady drip of quiet reminders that you're not from here. They might call it the heart of the empire, but that heart has walls, and Nords don't always get invited inside. Even the Imperial Legion, which is supposed to be a mix of cultures and backgrounds, often has Nords doing the hardest work. They're sent to rough outposts or used as shock troops. Their strength is praised, but their ideas aren't. Officers still prefer clean-shaven men with clipped voices and proper schooling. Even a Nord veteran gets passed over for promotion in favor of someone with the right manners. Off the battlefield, it doesn't get easier. If a Nord tries to open a business, they'll find the permits slow to come. If they settle in one of the cities, they're usually grouped in certain districts, often poorer ones. Neighbors call them loud or unclean. Any trouble that happens in town, a Nord gets blamed first. And if they complain, they're told they should be grateful to be in the Empire at all. But the thing is, a lot of Nords still believe in the Empire, or at least the idea of it. They remember the stories of the Septum line, of the unity it once brought. Some of them served alongside Redguards, Bretons, and even Dunmer, standing shoulder to shoulder against bandits, monsters, and worse. They came south thinking that history still mattered, that the Empire still meant something. What they find instead is a country that doesn't know what to do with them. Cyrodiil likes Nords when they're swinging axes on the border, but not when they're shopping in the market. They're hired for their muscle, not welcomed for their minds. Even when a Nord brings gold, skill, or service, it's seen as an exception, not the rule. People still mutter about drunkenness or violence as if it's part of their blood, and the Stormcloak Rebellion didn't help. Now every Nord in Cyrodiil is seen as a question mark. Are they loyal? Are they a threat? Doesn't matter that most of them left Skyrim to get away from that fight. In Cyrodiil, they get painted with the same brush, and it puts them in an impossible spot. Speak too proudly of Skyrim, and you're seen as a rebel. Speak too kindly of the Empire, and you're a traitor to your people. So most stay quiet. They work, they keep their heads down, and they try to build something for themselves in a land that doesn't seem to want them. But deep down, they still carry that Nordic fire. Not just the kind that burns in battle, but the kind that keeps a soul warm when the world turns cold. That fire doesn't go out easy, even in the middle of Cyrodiil. Even surrounded by temples, towers, and polished stone, a Nord remembers the mountains. They remember the sound of snow under boots, the weight of a sword passed down through generations, the old songs sung around a fire. They remember who they are, even when no one else does. And that's what makes it hard. Not just being treated like an outsider, but being made to feel like you have to choose between where you're from and where you are. That's why it sucks to be a Nord in Cyrodiil. You're proud of your homeland, but you came south for peace. You still believe in honor, but you're treated like a problem. You crossed the border looking for a new life, but you found that you never really left the war behind. When a Nord walks through the streets of Cyrodiil, they can feel the eyes on them. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it isn't. A shopkeeper keeps a hand near the lockbox. A guard watches a little longer than necessary. A passerby crosses to the other side of the street. The moment people hear the accent or see the armor, the image forms in their heads. Nord means trouble, not because of anything done, not because of any real crime, but because of a long-standing idea that Nords are brutes. It's not something new. This stereotype has been around for centuries. Cyrodiilic culture likes to paint itself as refined, clean, and civil. Anything that falls outside that is called savage. And for many Imperials, Nords fit that label. They're called drunkards, fighters, and raiders. Songs from the north get described as shouting. Nord weapons are called crude. Their stories get ignored, and their wisdom gets brushed off as superstition. The worst part is, it doesn't matter how the Nord actually acts. A peaceful trader can be insulted in the market. A polite traveler gets mocked for their voice. A disciplined soldier might still get passed over for a position, because someone assumes they'll solve problems with fists instead of words. There's this unspoken idea that Nords don't belong in positions of leadership, teaching, or planning. They're seen as tools, not thinkers. And when one speaks calmly or shows skill in magic or politics, people act surprised, as if a Nord being smart or composed is a rare thing. The stereotype is so deep that even young Nords start to feel it. Born in Cyrodiil, raised with the Empire's customs, they still get asked if their family brawls at dinner. They still get told to watch their temper, even if they've never raised their voice. It becomes this constant pressure to prove they're not what others expect. But no matter how careful they are, it only takes one loud moment for all that effort to be forgotten. That's the real trap. Nords are expected to be violent, and if one finally gets angry, after enough poking and mocking, then everyone watching just nods and says they knew it. The reaction becomes the proof, and that reaction is easy to provoke when someone's had to bite their tongue for years. This prejudice shows up in every layer of society. In taverns, people wait for a Nord to get drunk and cause problems, even if they're just there to relax. In courts, their testimony is doubted more often. In cities, they're used for guard work and heavy lifting, but rarely for anything that requires trust or planning. Even in the Legion, where Nords are known for bravery, they're still stuck at the bottom unless they fit into a very specific mold. Speak too strongly, and you're called a hothead. Speak too softly, and you're dismissed as dull. There's no winning. That's not to say every Imperial thinks this way. There are plenty who see through the lies, who know that strength doesn't mean savagery. But the system still leans against them. The image of the barbarian Nord is too useful. It gives Cyrodiil someone to look down on while pretending to be open to all. It's the same reason that tales of the Empire's victories always show Nords breaking gates or lifting siege weapons, while the clever plans and negotiations get credited to someone else. It makes them into background players in stories they helped shape, and over time it wears them down. A Nord in Cyrodiil can start to wonder if they have to act less like themselves just to fit in, if they should change their name, hide their accent, dull their voice, and pretend they never climbed the throat of the world or fought beside shield brothers. Some do. Others lean into the image and become what people expect because it's easier than fighting the current every day. But none of them forget. Even if they smile and play along, they remember the slurs. They remember being followed in shops. They remember being treated like danger in human form. And no treaty or flag changes that. That's why this stigma hurts so much. It doesn't just shape how others treat Nords. It shapes how Nords see themselves. They know their culture is more than axes and shouting. They remember the quiet parts, the songs passed down by mothers, the lessons spoken around the fire, the deep respect for the dead and the land. But those things get ignored, replaced by cheap jokes and tired insults. And that gap between who they are and how they're seen keeps growing. It's not about pride. It's about being allowed to exist without always having to defend your name. That's what makes life in Cyrodiil so exhausting for a Nord. You carry your whole homeland on your shoulders, and everywhere you go, someone's waiting for you to drop it. For Nords living in Cyrodiil, it's not just how Imperials see them that causes trouble. It's also how their own people back in Skyrim do. The Civil War left deep marks on the province, and even those who didn't fight took sides in their hearts. Ulfric's cause wasn't just about borders. To many Nords, it was about honor, about not bending the knee. And even though the Empire still stands, the wound never closed. So when a Nord moves south to Cyrodiil, whether for work, family, or peace, they carry that choice with them like a scar that never fades. They get labeled fast. Some in Skyrim don't care why they left. They just see them as deserters. To them, living in the Empire's heart means you've already picked your side. And it's not the one they respect. It doesn't matter if you never lifted a sword. It doesn't matter if you left before the war even started. The moment you settle under the Empire's banner, you're marked. That makes life harder in ways that don't always show on the surface. A letter home might not get a reply. An old friend might stop speaking your name. Your family still in Skyrim might get questions in the market. "Didn't your cousin go imperial?" They don't mean it kindly, and that weight falls on every Nord in Cyrodiil who still cares about their roots. It's a quiet kind of shame. You might walk the streets of the imperial city, wearing furs from the Pale, eat food the way your mother taught you, sing songs from the north, but in the eyes of some, you've already given up your claim. You're seen as someone who traded the cold winds of Skyrim for the soft halls of Cyrodiil. That hurts, because for many, it wasn't about abandoning their people. It was about survival, about building something stable. Not every Nord wanted to see sons and daughters die for a cause they didn't fully believe in, and not every Nord in Cyrodiil agrees with everything the Empire does. But trying to explain that to someone with a blue bear on their shield is like shouting into a storm. They don't want to hear reasons, they want loyalty. Ulfric's name still gets spoken with fire in some parts of Skyrim, and those who stood aside or moved away get grouped in with cowards, and the judgment doesn't stop with strangers. Even close kin can carry that bitterness. A father who stayed behind might speak colder to a son who left. A sister who fought at Windhelm might look at her brother in Chorrol like she doesn't know him anymore. It's not always about hate. Sometimes it's just hurt. They feel like you left them to carry the weight of Skyrim's future alone. And when someone you love starts treating you like a stranger, it cuts deeper than any insult from an Imperial. The pressure to prove yourself never goes away. Some Nords in Cyrodiil try to make up for it by talking louder about their roots, keeping their speech rough, avoiding Imperial customs. Others go quiet, tired of defending choices they had no control over. But no matter what they do, the eyes from Skyrim still follow. You hear it in tavern talk when travelers pass through. You see it in the letters that never come, and you feel it most during war. When tensions rise again, when skirmishes break out in the Reach or along the borders, the judgment returns. People ask where your loyalties lie. They want to know if you're with the Legion or if your heart beats with the rebels. And if you say you just want peace, they say that's not enough. That's the trap. In Cyrodiil, you're still seen as a savage. But in Skyrim, you're no longer seen as one of them. You're in the middle, unwanted by both, carrying a legacy that's been shaped without your say. And it doesn't matter if you've done good work, raised a family, helped rebuild cities. In the eyes of some back home, you're just a name that left. Maybe even a name they stopped speaking. And that kind of silence follows you. It follows when you go to Nord temples in the south and see fewer people each year. It follows when your children don't learn the old words. It follows when you raise your glass for the new year and no one around you knows the song. You still feel pride. You still remember what it means to be a Nord. But sometimes it feels like you're the only one trying to keep that fire alive. And no matter how bright you make it, someone out there still calls it betrayal. That's the part that stings most. You're not just judged for where you are. You're judged for what you're not. Not on the front lines, not shouting the oaths, not spilling blood, just living, just trying to make it work. But for some, that's enough to make you a traitor. And once that label sticks, it doesn't wash off easy. Being a Nord in Cyrodiil means walking a tightrope that never ends. On one side stands the Empire, bruised but still standing, trying to hold together a land that's always shifting. On the other side are the Stormcloaks filled with fire, shouting for Skyrim to stand alone. And in between, you've got Nords just trying to work a forge, run a shop, or raise a family without their words being twisted into politics. When they left Skyrim, many thought they were choosing a fresh start, not taking sides. Some wanted peace, others followed love, some just wanted to see the world beyond the throat of the world. But as soon as the war broke out, that choice vanished. Every neighbor watches them like a spy. Every soldier wants to know what banner they'd raise if blades came out. The Empire calls on them to prove their loyalty, to show they're not secretly flying blue behind closed doors. Stormcloaks call them cowards, deserters, traitors who turned their back on the fight for Nordic pride. They can't win, stay silent, and they're weak. Speak out, and they're stirring trouble. Even something as simple as wearing a bear pelt or carving a totem can earn them glares. They carry their homeland in the way they talk, in the way they walk, but every day it's thrown back at them like an insult. When the White Gold Concordat banned Talos worship, many Nords in Cyrodiil kept their shrines hidden but alive. Some were caught, some were punished, some just disappeared. And no one came to their defense. They weren't seen as brave or faithful. They were seen as inconvenient, not imperial enough to be protected, not Stormcloak enough to be honored. The war made everything worse. Tensions flared, people took sides, and the Nords of Cyrodiil became easy targets. When a farm burned or a brawl broke out, someone always muttered about a Nord being involved, even if none were nearby. In the cities, they stopped being neighbors and started being suspects. In the countryside, they became warnings. Don't be like them. Don't bring war into peaceful lands. All they wanted was a place to live. They didn't ask to be dragged into a struggle over gods and borders, but both banners expect their oath, their steel, their blood. The Empire thinks a good Nord should stand in the shield wall and fight for order. The Stormcloaks believe a true Nord would never bow to a foreign crown, and Cyrodiil, the place they now call home, demands they pick a side and defend it, even if that side never defends them back. This pressure changes people. Some Nords in Cyrodiil grow quiet. They speak less of their traditions. They stop telling stories of Shore and Sovngarde. They don't join local feasts. They don't visit temples. They try to become smaller, harder to spot, easier to forget. Others dig in deeper. They raise their children to remember who they are. They sing the old songs behind closed doors. They gather in hidden places to speak of the land they left behind. And still others crack. They lash out. They drink more. They fight. Not because they're wild, but because the weight of being torn in two becomes too much. Every banner they see feels like a threat. Every salute a test. Every silence a trap. Living between two banners means having no true shield. When the fighting comes close, they're the first to be questioned and the last to be trusted. No one asks how they feel about the war. No one asks if they even want it. They're used, labeled, watched. And when it suits someone's cause, they're blamed. Not all Nords in Cyrodiil are warriors. Not all dream of Sovngarde or long for Skyrim's snow. Some just want a job, a roof, and a bit of peace, but none of them are left alone. Between two banners, there is no place to plant your feet and say, "This is mine." There's only the hope that tomorrow someone won't ask what side you're on, because no matter what answer you give, it will never be the right one. Living in Cyrodiil means losing pieces of yourself, slowly and without warning. For Nords, that loss often starts with the small things. A feast day comes and goes, and no one around them cares. In Skyrim, the mead hall would be alive, with stories, the air full of smoke and laughter, drums and song ringing through the snow. In Cyrodiil, the day is just another day. No one shares the tales of Isgramor or sings the old hunting songs. No one sets aside a horn of mead for a fallen brother. What was once a ritual becomes a memory. Even the way they speak fades. Old Nord words slip out and get strange looks. Some stop using them altogether, not out of shame, but because they grow tired of repeating themselves or being mocked. Speaking plainly becomes a defense. Speaking proudly becomes a risk. In Cyrodiil, Talos worship isn't just discouraged. It's watched. Shrines are hidden. Prayers are whispered. A statue once kept in a place of honor now stays in a box beneath the bed. They still pray to him, but not in the open, and never without glancing over their shoulder. The white gold concordat made it clear that Talos worship breaks imperial law, but to a Nord, it breaks something deeper to stay silent. Still, many do, because the alternative can mean losing a job, a home, or worse. Neighbors who once shared bread now grow quiet if they suspect you still honor the Ninth Divine. Some even report it, not out of hate, but out of fear. The Thalmor shadow hangs long. People remember what happened to those who were caught. And Nords in Cyrodiil aren't protected the way citizens in Skyrim are. No Jarls stand up for them. No Stormcloak army comes marching to defend their faith. They're left to carry their beliefs alone. They try to hold on to what they can. Some carve runes into wood and hang them near their door. Others keep bits of snowberry or icewolf fur as reminders of home. But Cyrodiil isn't a land that makes room for these things. Imperial culture values order, reason, and quiet worship. Nords are loud by nature. Their culture is based on story, song, trial, and celebration. It doesn't fit into the polished marble halls of Cyrodiil. It spills out and makes people uncomfortable. And so, the pressure builds. Not by force, but by slow erosion. A Nord in the capital might stop singing old songs because no one joins in. Might stop talking about Sovngarde because no one knows what it means. Might stop holding naming rights or celebrating snowfall or carving totems because no one understands why it matters. And over time, it gets harder to explain. They try to teach their children, but the city speaks louder than they do. The children grow up surrounded by imperial customs. They learn the Empire's holidays, follow the 8 divines, dress and speak like their neighbors. They don't forget Skyrim, but they stop feeling tied to it. They become something in between. And the parents feel that gap widen every year. Holding onto tradition becomes a private act, but it isn't just religion or language. It's how they see the world. In Skyrim, strength earns respect. In Cyrodiil, it can be seen as threat. In Skyrim, hospitality is sacred. In Cyrodiil, people keep to themselves. In Skyrim, oaths are everything. In Cyrodiil, politics turn promises to dust. This clash changes how Nords move through life. They learn to hold their tongue when they'd rather speak. They choose not to fight, even when insulted. They stay quiet in temples, where they once would have led the prayer. And slowly, they begin to feel like strangers to their own story. Not because they've changed, but because everything around them refuses to understand what they came from. They aren't forced to forget, but remembering gets harder with every passing day. And sometimes, they wonder what's left if the songs go quiet, the shrines gather dust, and their tongue no longer fits in their mouth. What does it mean to be Nord then? In Cyrodiil, there's no easy answer. Only the slow, quiet struggle to keep tradition alive in a place that never asked for it and doesn't care if it disappears. One of the first things a Nord in Cyrodiil learns is that strength comes before skill. Even if they've trained for years, studied, earned respect back home, none of that seems to matter once they start looking for work in the Empire's heartland. They're not seen as craftsmen or scholars or merchants. They're seen as guards, bouncers, mercenaries, strong arms, not sharp minds. It doesn't matter if they were a blacksmith in Windhelm or a healer in Dawnstar. In Cyrodiil, they're expected to take orders, swing a sword, and keep their opinions to themselves. The system doesn't say it out loud, but it doesn't have to. It shows in the way applications go unanswered, in how they're waved away from guild halls and told there's no place for them. It shows in how they're pointed toward the city gates and told there's work guarding caravans or clearing bandits. Always work that's dangerous, dirty, or unwanted. They're given the kind of jobs that don't lead anywhere. And when they ask about moving up, about running a team, or joining the decision makers, the answer always shifts. They're told they're not the right fit, or that someone more experienced got the spot. But it's not about skill, it's about image. Nords in Cyrodiil carry a weight of expectations that hold them down. People assume they lack subtlety, that they're too blunt, or too proud, or too wild to be trusted with more. It doesn't matter how many years they live there or how carefully they follow the rules. The moment something goes wrong, fingers point to the Nord in the room. And if nothing goes wrong, they still don't get promoted. The idea of a Nord leading an office in the Imperial City or teaching magic in the Arcane University still feels strange to many, even though there's nothing in their blood or mind holding them back. It's not just about reputation. It's about how people treat the idea of worth. In Skyrim, strength and skill are respected. You earn your place by what you can do. In Cyrodiil, people still talk about merit, but too often, it's tied to who your family is, what school you went to, or whether you look and speak the right way. For a Nord, especially one without connections, that means climbing uphill, even when they do everything right. Some try to push past it. They join guilds, take on contracts, build up a name, and sometimes it works, but more often, they find the door only opens partway. They get stuck in roles that serve others but never lead. They're the sword, not the hand holding it. The shield, not the banner behind it. And over time, they learn not to reach higher because it only brings disappointment. Even in the Fighters Guild, where Nords should be at home, they're often passed over when it comes to leadership. Too rough, too loud, not diplomatic enough. Never mind that half the senior members came from similar roots. There's a sense that Nords are good for frontline work, but not for planning or policy. It's not that Cyrodiil hates them, it's that it doesn't see them clearly. It expects them to fit a role and punishes them when they don't. So the smart Nord who wants to study alchemy ends up hauling crates. The artist who carves statues back home now sharpens blades for others. The young Nord with dreams of joining the Legion's officers gets stuck as a foot soldier while others pass him by, and it wears on them. Not all at once, but slowly. Each rejection chips away at their sense of purpose. They start asking if they were foolish to come, if they should have stayed in Skyrim, where at least they were judged by what they did, not where they came from. But for many, going back isn't an option. They've built lives in Cyrodiil. Families, homes, memories. They've put down roots, so they stay. They keep working, even when they know they're worth more, because they have to, because they hope it might change. And sometimes they look around and realize they're not alone. There are others like them, trying to be more than what people expect. And that helps. Not enough to fix the problem, but enough to keep going. Because deep down, they know the truth. Being Nord should never mean settling for less. But in Cyrodiil, it often does. Being a Nord in Cyrodiil means living without a true home. The land around you isn't yours, and the land you came from starts to feel like a place you're not welcome in anymore. The Imperials around you may smile, may even offer you a seat at the table, but you never stop feeling like a guest. Every word you say, every choice you make, feels like it's being measured, not by what's right or wrong, but by whether it fits the Empire's way of thinking. You can live in the heart of the capital for decades, raise children there, serve the Legion, pay taxes, keep the peace, and still find people calling you an outsider when it suits them. When the Empire is strong, they call you a citizen. When it's weak, they start looking around for someone to blame, and the Nord, with a bold voice and a shrine to Talos, is always close at hand. Even the laws remind you that your roots don't belong here. The gods you worship are against the rules. Your traditions don't make it into the official calendars. Your tongue doesn't echo through the halls of power. And when you try to hold on to your ways, people say you're being stubborn. When you try to blend in, they say you're trying too hard. No matter what you do, you're not quite enough. And if you look back towards Skyrim for comfort, you don't always find it there either. You go north, thinking maybe your old friends will understand. Maybe the Jarls will still call you kin, but the welcome is colder than the wind through Windhelm's gates. To many in Skyrim, a Nord living in Cyrodiil is a traitor in spirit, even if not by name. They say you've gone soft, that you've forgotten what it means to be true to the old ways, that living under the Empire's wing makes you part of the problem. Even if you've never turned your back on Talos, even if you've bled for your kin, they look at you like you chose comfort over honor. The Stormcloaks see you as suspect. The Loyalists see you as uncertain. There's no place where you can stand without someone questioning where your heart lies. And the truth is, your heart is torn. Because you do love Skyrim, but you also see value in Cyrodiil. You believe in the idea of the Empire, even if it's not perfect. You understand what unity can do, what peace can build, what danger comes from endless war. But trying to explain that just makes you sound like you've forgotten who you are. So you stay quiet. You do your work. You raise your children, you make your home where you can, but in the quiet moments, you feel the weight of that choice. You think about the festivals that no longer happen, the family that stopped writing, the stories you've told so many times. You start to wonder if they're still true. You carry the past in a place where it doesn't belong, and you carry the present in a way that leaves you out of place. Some find their own kind and make small homes together, a tavern run by Nords. A circle of friends who speak the old tongue and share the old songs in low voices behind closed doors. But even then, the feeling doesn't leave. It's like living in the space between two cliffs, close to both, but not part of either. You help your neighbors when the town floods. You fight off bandits when they come through the pass. You stand beside Imperials in the Legion, just like your ancestors did. But when people talk about true Cyrodiils, they don't mean you. And when Nords talk about true Sons of Skyrim, they don't mean you either. You're a gap in the map, a name no one writes down, and yet you stay. Because someone has to show that being Nord doesn't mean following orders blindly or shouting for war at every slight. Someone has to live in the middle and make it work, even if it hurts. Because the alternative is giving up your voice, your memories, or your hope. And for most Nords in Cyrodiil, that's not an option. They might not have a brotherhood, but they have each other. Scattered across towns and cities, keeping the fire alive in their own ways. They write their own sagas, not of glory and conquest, but of holding fast, of raising children who know where they come from, of surviving in a world that forgets them. And maybe that's not the story the bards will sing, but it's a story worth telling all the same.